thank you so much for your willingness to volunteer helping run slides in our Sunday morning worship. Your role is really pretty significant. In fact, I often kind of jokingly, but not really, say to our audio person and to our slide person, you two are the most important people in the entire room on a Sunday. Because everything we're doing in worship is dependent upon people being able to hear and people being able to see. So because we don't have a big thick bulletin with all of the lyrics to our music and with all of our liturgy printed out, everyone is looking at the screen and what's being projected there. And so what you're doing is important and it matters, and we want to thank you for participating in it. A couple of pieces of instruction. We'd like you to arrive at 9 a.m. Not at 10 a.m., but at 9 a.m. And the reason for that is because we want you to be there during the musicians' rehearsal. And your role during the rehearsal is to ensure that what you're seeing on the computer matches what's being sung. And you've probably been in worship where what's projected on the screen is different from what Kevin or one of our women singers is singing. And that's something we want to avoid as much as possible. We're not perfect at this, but we want to be continually improving. And one of the key ways for that to happen is for you to be there at 9 a.m. and making sure that you're cross-checking what's being sung with what's on the slides. So that's a super important piece of this particular volunteer role. Once worship begins, the number one thing that we're asking you to be is attentive. We want you to be attentive. That simply means you've got to pay attention to the service. It's really a pretty simple task in many ways, just to click the next slide. What's really important is that you be able to anticipate what's coming. If you had been there during rehearsal, that's going to be easier because you will have already heard the musicians go through their set and you'll know what's coming. So you want to make sure that the lyrics for the next verse or for the upcoming chorus are put up on the screen slightly before the congregation begins to sing them. So you want to be a little bit ahead of everybody else. And sometimes there's a really slight delay from the time in which you press the button on the computer to the time in which the image is projected on the screen. And so that's another reason it's important for you to be there early so that you can anticipate that. So the main thing we need you to do is make sure that the words to our songs are put up at the appropriate time. Of course, there's other aspects of our worship gathering that are on the screen. Everything from the call to worship, to the confession of faith, to announcements, and to the sermon notes, and everything that takes place after the sermon. Again, the same principles would apply. We want you to be attentive and to anticipate what's coming. Probably the most challenging time for you to do that is during the sermon because you haven't heard the sermon beforehand. But normally, what you're going to see on the sermon notes, I'm going to say verbatim. And so when you hear me say verbatim what's on the next slide, go ahead and put that slide up. You'll want to leave that slide up as well instead of taking it down or going to a blank screen. The reason we ask you to leave that slide up is so that people who are note takers can see it up there and can write down what is on the screen. One other thing that's very important that sometimes you're going to need to do is be aware of the blank screen slide. You can press, I believe, F5 on the computer and that will immediately blank out anything that's on the screen. And it's up to your discretion for the time to do that. For example, if we make an announcement for which there's no slide, probably the best thing to do is for you to blank out the screen so that people aren't seeing an announcement that doesn't fit with what the man giving the announcements is saying. Again, attentiveness. Attentiveness is the key. This is a super important position, but it's something that we've had high school students do regularly. So anybody can do it as long as they're willing to pay attention and to anticipate what's happening and to come a little bit early. So thank you for your willingness to run the slides. One last thing, you can always ask a question of Kevin or of myself or of Will if you're unclear about something or if something doesn't match up. But thank you for serving in this role. We really appreciate it.